I have wanted to, for the longest time, create some sort of resource that every human resource professional and every decision maker could have access to that was unbiased and worked with the fundamentals of performance management. I think it's the most misunderstood and misused component of talent management today. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a series here on YouTube that's accessible to anyone who wants to see it. I even purposely am not putting it on LinkedIn because I want to create dialogue. I want people to actually authentically learn and to make credible and important decisions about their performance management. And so this will be a series. Today we're going to talk about the definitions, what we're really trying to accomplish. I'm going to have some slides for you to download so that you can use those for notes and for answering some questions. From this part one, I'd like for you to get some assessment questions going, understand the fundamental definitions involved in performance management. That's really the core objective of this first in a series. I'll also do a little bit at the end about where the origin of appraisal came from. Upcoming videos, I will do a history of performance management. That'll be short, but it'll be interesting. And also to my recommendations on if you choose to do performance management, what should you keep in mind to make it the most effective in terms of time, cost, and protection to your culture. All right, let's get started. Oh, by the way, I encourage you to subscribe if you haven't. Like this video so that you can add it to your history because you'll want to use this as a reference to refer back to. And please share it because I know there'll be a lot of people who will benefit from this series. So here we go. We are going to talk about basically what is performance management. We're starting at 101. Bottom line, foundational. What is performance management? What's the language we use around it, and what those things mean? And then as we're doing that, I want to encourage you to start evaluating from the slides, from this discussion, and I invite you to make comments. What do you want to do about it? And I also designed these slides that you can download them because there's going to be a couple of exercises associated with them that you can start to really educate yourself as an internal advisor for those who are the key decision makers around software and those kinds of things. So in essence, I do believe overall, particularly if you're practicing old school management, that it's not particularly useful. In fact, I think it can be harming leaders' credibility because they don't know how to use it, they don't use it well, they can't stand doing them, they're rushed, they have little meaning, and I think that hampers the rapport between leaders and managers. I mean, managers and their team members, those they lead, because of things like the perception gap, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And I think it also, because it's not done effectively, it undermines appropriate career advancement for many people, and really that's just not fair. So these are some of the driving reasons why I really wanted to create this series on YouTube so that it could be accessible and available to everyone. So the purpose of this series is, first of all, to provide a source of understanding the basics of what's performance management, ultimately so we can make better decisions about it, to provide a source of objective evaluation so that you can achieve what you really want in terms of your purpose of performance management. And I want to provide a place for safe, independent dialogue outside of perhaps even LinkedIn so that we are just doing this. That's why I'm putting it on YouTube. And also to understand the basics of performance management, to learn about it independent of any software sales. You should know about performance management and what you want to do with it before you buy the software that surrounds it. Okay, so here are the questions that I want you to consider. Please, again, download the handout so that you'll have these available as we go through this. First, why do you even do it? I think a lot of performance management is done because people just do it, not because they really think it's a good reason. There's good reasons to do it. It's really creating a lot of value, etc. I have to say that I worked for companies that were on the Inc. 500 list that had no performance management like we know today, and that were very successful. So to think that we have to have it so that you got to be, it's do or die, trust me, that is not true. Okay. So uh, the next question is, what do you really want to accomplish from it? What's the value of it? And what is it really contributing? Of course, that all depends on how you're using it. And what's the value to whom? And how is it bringing value? Is it costing more than adding value? Are there any elements of harm? And as I said in my opener, I think that there is. And so the final question you want to ask is, so why keep doing it? My challenge to you is to make your case. Okay, so we're going to now go into some definitions. What are the definitions and typical language used around performance management? You need to have those on straight and understand those so that you can make appropriate decisions about them. Okay? So, what is performance management? Well, it is the process of maintaining or improving employee performance. Now, the question is, why ultimately do you want to do that? You got to know your why. And how do we maintain the and maintain and improve? We do that through performance assessment tools, coaching, etc., etc. And by the way, this basic definition is from SHRM. Ultimately, we want people to fulfill the expectations of their job description so they can get the desired results. That's fundamentally what we're talking about here in terms of intent and purpose of performance management. Now, again, you got to know your why. Now, as we continue definitions, what are we really talking about here? First, we're saying, okay, what does performance even mean? And it is the action or process of carrying out or accomplishing something. That means we are doing something, and is the how we doing it, because ultimately we're wanting to produce results. So when we're looking at performance management, some performance management is designed around assessing the action. Some is designed around assessing the process or the way in which something is done as it's being carried out, all to serve the desired results. So the question is, what are we really managing in performance management? What are we really managing and why? And what now what not only what are we really managing, but what do you really want to manage that makes sense, that's cost effective, etc. Your approach and emphasis on performance management, when you think about the doing it, the how we're doing it, the why we're doing it to produce results, here's the questions. Where is the most energy and focus? The doing it, the why it's being doing, the way it's being done, the why, the results. Where is your emphasis in your current performance management design? This is very important because your emphasis, your time, energy, even money could be on a part that is not particularly productive. And by the way, maybe undermining the very things you want and causing ill will and negative impact to your company culture. And this is the things that I'd like for you to think about. Now, we're going to go into more definitions, and I'm going to present to you a list of competencies, and this is an exercise I want to encourage you to do, along with, of course, answering the questions, okay? So this is a list of competencies from a random website, and let's look at some definitions around what we're assessing in performance management, okay? So one of the first things we look at are competencies. Some companies have competencies, some companies don't. What is a competency? It is the ability to do something successfully, effectively, or efficiently. That's what the word competent means, okay? And so when you look at this list of leadership competencies, that's what we're looking for. Now, another word we use a lot is capable, and another word we use, and I think we misuse a lot, is skill. So, capable means able to do. Skill means a mastered capability or a mastered behavior. I think we interchange these too much. I think we call things skilled when someone is capable of doing something, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're skilled at it. Being able to break these things out is very important in effective and constructive performance management. All right, now let's hop down to this list here. And I'd like for you, as you independently give some thought to this, look through this list and answer this question. Answer these questions. Which of these are a behavior? Which one of these are an attitude or a mindset? A personal value, a capability, a personal quality, a skill, a process that can be learned. Which of these can be objectively measured? And which is more likely to be subjective or objective in their approach to measurement? These two words are critical in understanding effective performance management. So, in this list, what part of this is the doing it, the how it's being done, or the way it's being done? And how can these be measured? Or how are they being measured? And are they measured in a way that's actually helpful and serving to get to a better result? Okay, so that's the question. And then, adding to that, how are these being assessed in a constructive and useful way? Are they subjective or objective in their assessment? This piece right here, I would really encourage you to park on, spend some time with, because this is the part right here that causes a lot of ill will, perception gaps, and just becomes a pain in everybody's butt that people can't stand or hate, and why many companies are just, completely redoing their performance management or doing away with it altogether. And it's really because of these issues right here. Okay? All right, so let's go on to some additional definitions. And I'd like to define the word assess, because performance management is about assessing. So assess means to evaluate or estimate the nature, ability, or quality of. And here's where it gets dicey, particularly when you're talking about some of the elements that were on that competency list. So let's look at then, is your assessment subjective or objective? Subjective means it's based on or influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions. That creates a perception where someone would draw a conclusion and make a judgment of, and then, by the way, that's right to him, whether it's to them or whether it's right or not. It's just real. It's their real truth based on feelings, tastes, and opinions. What's an opinion? Opinion is a view or judgment formed out of something not necessarily based on fact or knowledge. Very important. And usually something that cannot be measured. So what is objective? Objective is not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. So it's like something, for example, did they get a result? Did they or did they not? Is something complete or incomplete? Did they hit the target or did they not hit the target? Those are very concrete, objective things in someone's performance that can be measured. All right? So here's the question. Is the way your current performance management designed to be more subjective or objective, or neither or both? And if it's subjective, it is designed to create perception gaps. So what is a perception gap? Let's give an example of numerical ratings, which I hope nobody does those anymore, but I'm sure they still do. Let's say you have an element, a quality, a competency called communication. And the manager says, okay, this person is a 3, and the person that they're assessing thinks they're a 4 or 5. So that's a perception gap. Now you got to explain to the person specifically why they didn't get rated the 4 or the 5. You've got to be very specific. What happens most of the time is managers don't know how to explain it. They don't know how to give examples. And so the person feels demoralized because this creates ill will in the relationship. It is not constructive to have this kind of dynamic going on. The manager doesn't know how to coach it different, can't give examples of it, can't coach it in real time, and they're telling them something that happened to them that they remembered like 3 months ago that they're putting on the performance management assessment. Well, that's ridiculous. Why tell people something they did 3 months ago, that they now have no chance to course correct? Why not tell them in real time? So in this series, we're going to talk about, we're going to lay the foundation. Eventually, I will recommend the best, most effective, if you're going to have performance management, the components that need to be involved to make it the most effective. For now, let's just stick with the basics, stick with the foundation. What are the definitions, and what are the questions I need to be asking myself related to our current performance management practices? So I want to stop for a minute and just reiterate that what you've heard in that last segment does, I believe, a lot of harm to relationships between managers and employees. It sows seeds of distrust and disrespect, and it really undermines a positive culture. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because I think there are deeper subtext issues that are being ignored, because it's just something we got to just plow through, something we just got to do, and then just ignoring the real tangible impact that it's having, and really the overall lack of value and waste of time and money. Okay, let's keep going with our final segment. So ultimately, the whole goal of performance management is to improve performance to get improved results. Well, here's the question: what kind of results? Because behavior will always produce a result. It may not be the ones we want. So, based on the book The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker, we have to be very specific in the kinds of results we want. So what are the results? Needed, desired, and meaningful, meaning what's going to create the business the most significant impact. Okay, here's what's kind of crazy. You could have someone that can get these kinds of results and still be rated, some crazy ratings, ambiguous ratings on a performance management review. That's where it's not constructive. What's the difference in a grade of 3 or 4 on communication or teamwork when they're getting the needed results? Unless it's something destructive, unless it's a counterproductive behavior, that degree of perception between 3 and 4, what's the value of that? Where does that really make any difference? So you'll see in one of the subsequent parts of the series, we'll talk about being effective and as a framework for reasonable and constructive performance management. Because you could have a lot of great qualities and still not get needed, desired, or meaningful results. So measuring those as the end all, that's where all the time and energy and money is spent. Is that really constructive, and is that really helpful? It may not be if you're not getting results, or if you are getting the results. So these kinds of results are what's really important. Okay, one final piece to this segment 1, and that is we're going to look at the word appraisal, which is still, by the way, used, and I'm telling you up front, it is dated. So let's first of all look at what appraisal actually means, and then its origins. So appraise means to set a value, to estimate the worth of something, to assess or make a judgment. Now, the word appraise actually is a carryover from the 1930s to the 1960s. And when you really ask yourself the question, judging and measuring the quality of something, does that actually improve a result? Not necessarily. And that goes back to it being subjective versus objective. Now, in another part of the series, I will be doing a brief overview of the history of performance management. So you want to make sure you're subscribed if you're not, so make sure you get that. For now, here's where the history of appraisal came from. It came about between the 1930s, well, it started around the 1930s by a guy named Walter Scott, originated in Australia, and it introduced the concepts of rating the abilities of the staff. Okay, he also introduced man-to-man comparison ratings, which that just sounds painful in and of itself. Now that we see it from our era and our point of view. What's interesting is then it started, and by the way, that led to then in the 50s measuring the performance of workers based on their personality traits. And here's what I find interesting: all of this had nothing to do with their productivity or their output or getting the results. There was a swing from productivity to abilities, man-to-man comparisons, and measuring personality traits. There was a swing towards that because they thought that if people could have more of these traits, then they would have better productivity. But honestly, that is not necessarily true. Okay, because you can only get so much in these kinds of ratings, and then how do you coach that? How do you practically improve that? That's very difficult to do. So the word appraisal is dated. It is a carryover from the early 1900s, and but if you still use it today, I just want to encourage you to not use it anymore. Okay, and because appraising again goes back to judging and assessing, and it is clearly based on subjectivity, not on objectivity, which has to do with productivity and getting results or an incident happening or not happening. So it's about when you're measuring volume and dimension of something, that's where that's where the perception gap really starts to occur. All right, all right. So that's our first video in a series. Please, down below will be the slides. Please take the slides, do the exercises, and please make sure you're subscribed. Please share this because it's going to be a great series, and you won't want to miss any of the videos attached to the series. There also will be some shorts, some little tidbits as reminders. I'm trying to put in some bite-size or micro-learning in this as well because this is a really huge issue and a tremendous opportunity for you to contribute some constructive information and perhaps decisions to your company. All right, we'll see you next time.